Welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit, a platform where we have invited Spirit to share messages, healings, and transmissions with all of us. May this energetic experience help us to expand our awareness and to deepen the relationship we have with our higher self, our spiritual team, and with Source, however we define them. Thank you for being here and for taking part in this amazing journey. Welcome to the Channeling Spirit Virtual Summit. This is Season 3, Episode 3 with Maria Vasquez. For those of you that were familiar with Season 1, and you can always catch the replays in YouTube, they are now posted. Ana Maria was part of Season 1. As I've shared with those of you that have been along this journey with me all day, Ana Maria and Shannon are two of the big reasons why I went into channeling. And so this is the other half of my influence team. And it's coincidental that last season they spoke one right after the other, and this season they're speaking one right after the other. So it's lovely to have you, Ana Maria. As always, I will let you introduce yourself and then we will go from there.
Well, first of all, I am so grateful that we have this platform. And secondly, I rarely get my name pronounced correctly, let alone authentically. So I honor and thank you for that. And now it feels like I'm sitting at home with my family around the kitchen, right? So thank you so much for that.
Lovely to feel like we're at home with each other. That's lovely. It's a great metaphor. So it's an honor to have you, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm Ana Maria Vasquez, and I am a multisensory animal and nature intuitive. And what I'm really wanting to talk about today is how nature speaks to us, right? Because whether it's that going for guidance or just some information or even like channeling a message from a tree or a lake or a mountain, that this is a place for us to remember that unity consciousness in everything that we do. And so I'm excited, right? Like I've been giddy about being able to have this conversation, because so often in the channeling world, even nature gets forgotten, and people want to, channel off planet things, and it's all fun. It's all great. I just always like to remember that right here in our home and in our backyard, we can channel and have channeling buddies that are very close.
We were talking about Fae it kind of came up in the conversation with Shannon. And I know that you talk a lot about kind of the natural realm, which most oftentimes includes things like rocks and plants and animals and elements. But do you also play with the Fae friends? Is that part of your repertoire, if you will, of the energies that you bring into your work?
Yeah, absolutely. More commonly, right? I am connecting with a specific tree or a specific rock, a plant, something to that effect. But there's these layers as well, right? There are nature spirits that work with that tree. And this is where the elementals come in. So the fae, the fairies, the gnomes, the sprites, these are other elementals, other spiritual beings, for lack of a better term, that are connected with these natural realm elements. And we can connect with all of them, either individually as a group or as a collective, right? So I get so giddy. I've had many experiences in fairy rings, and when I connect with people who have a connection with the fairies more than I do, I feel like bubbles around me. I feel, yesterday it happened, one of my clients And I was like, what's your connection to the fairies? I'm like, because it feels like cotton candy in here. And I'm like, I don't know how else to explain that. So I love the fairies. I love the elementals. And they are, I feel like we don't actually, I feel like we don't have enough people that are doing that or admit to doing that. And the experts to really teach that. I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded with a lot of those teachers, and I feature them in my work as well. But I feel like we really got to hunt them down sometimes to try and get that really cool connection piece.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is just the awareness. As people start to become aware of the fact that these realms exist, people are going to be drawn to that, to explore that more. So I think it is gonna happen. But it's wonderful that this subject and topic comes up. There's something that I want to talk about, and I thought about it during Shannon's session when we were talking about something with regards to animal communication. One of the things that I think it was, I don't remember exactly what Shannon said, but she made some comment about opening up our eyes to how the natural world is communicating to us. And I immediately thought of a day where I went for a walk. And as I'm walking, I came across a caterpillar that was right in the middle of my path, just hanging. It was a small little green caterpillar, just hanging in the middle of my path. And I sat there and I just kind of looked at it for a while. And I didn't get any message. I'm not connected yet to be able to communicate with them at that level. But I could feel the connection. I could feel the presence. I could feel the fact that this was put into my path deliberately. And then people were walking by and I said, by the way, there's a caterpillar here, so make sure you don't run into it by accident. And further down the path, I came across a turtle. I've never seen a turtle in the wild, and granted, it's not the wild, but it was just next to the path. And if I wasn't looking for it, I wouldn't have seen it. So why was I drawn to look down at that point to notice the turtle? And so I hung out with the turtle for a while, took some pictures. And then later on in the walk, I'm taking pictures of some boulders that caught my interest. And a dragonfly comes up and lands on a leaf that was in the frame that I was putting together for the stones. And so I'm using this as an example of these communications are all around us. They're happening all the time. And when we start to pay attention to them, we see them and we appreciate them and we invite them. And when I got home, I just kind of sat and said, okay, so what does the caterpillar mean to me? And I wrote down some things that came to me. What does the turtle represent for me? And this could be different from one day to the next. But for me today, what does the turtle represent? And then what does the dragonfly represent? And one thing that I didn't do is what do the boulders represent, which was another thing that caught my interest. And so this is one way in which we can communicate with nature, is just by seeing what presents itself to us and then asking ourselves when we're in a quiet moment, if it doesn't come to us right away, just kind of reflecting back and saying, cool, okay, so that might have been a message. What could that have been? And so I wanted to share that as an example of how we can communicate with nature.
That was so perfectly said. That's exactly it. And, people want to run for their animal symbolism books right away, which I get it, right? Like I have mine within reach all of the time. But what I've learned is it's more important based on how intuitive energy comes in. It's more important for us, like you did, to feel in what does this mean for me now, right? And the truth is, there are huge chapters written about each of these animals. And so there's a myriad of aspects for the message to come in. And we do need to feel into which one resonates the most right here, right now. And for us to feel into what does that represent for me versus what Anna Maria says it means, or Ted Andrews says it means. It's more important because when the message is coming in, it comes into, it hits the subconscious mind actually first, and then it will bring in, it's not words in that part of the brain, it is symbols and colors and feelings and emotions. And then your thinking brain comes in, and it should, right, when we are in balance, it should help connect the dots instead of acting like the bouncer and saying, what are you talking about? Where'd that come from? Am I making this up, right? Instead of, cite your source, let me see the paperwork. And then it sends the intuitive mind off screaming, crying. So what you said is perfect, because we want to feel into, what does this mean for me right now? And then it starts to prime the pump to bring through the other messages. And we're all doing it. We all just don't recognize that we're doing it, because we're bringing in energetic messages through our five senses, essentially, but it's a different channel. It's an energetic channel, but we can begin to intuit those messages. One of the things that I tell folks in my certification course is, I'm going to walk you through the mechanics, and by the time we end, you're going to realize you've already been doing it. You just didn't believe you could do it, and you didn't understand the mechanics to then, right, also have a little confidence in that. And when it feels too easy, you're on the right path. Whenever you're struggling, even for myself, right, as a proficient reader, if I feel myself efforting, or if I feel my shoulders come up, I am on the wrong path. I've disconnected for a moment, or got static in the line, and I need to take a deep breath, connect back in with that sacred life force energy, and then lean into it and let that come in. It really, everybody that I've worked with to unpack their intuitive backpacks, they get to the end, they're like, it's just so much simpler than I was trying to make it. And that's how it is for channeling too. Absolutely. And there's different, I got real hung up on that term channeling for a long time. And I think I made it feel like, or made it be something bigger than it really was. I was fine in talking to someone's dog and then translating that message to the person, right? This is what I got. This is what he said. This is what the cat said, whatever. But when it was that time to stand in the light and receive the message and speak it out through channeling or writing it out, right, I was making it be way bigger and way harder than it is. And working with Scott DeTamble, who is an amazing past life and life between life regressionist, and how Daniel and I met, I was able to just open up and speak. And then I was able to channel different beings, different trees, different animals, different high vibrational entities. And it's a whole different level than just the conversations that I had up until that point. So the first thing I want to tell people is it is way simpler than we make it. Our head really gets in the way.
Yeah. I wanted to emphasize that point as well, because I regularly talk about how we are channeling every day. Every single one of us is channeling every single day. We just don't label it as such. And we use this label of channeling because, Shannon just channeled Isa and another member of her team, Ezra, in a trance channel where she wasn't involved in consciously present in the conversation. We use channeling to represent that experience, and then we forget that the intuition that came to us to, don't forget to pick up your keys, or don't forget to take the pen, or don't forget to, grab a glass of water. Those insights that come to us, as small as that might be, can also be a expression of channeling, where our higher self said, hey, you haven't drank a lot of water today. Make sure you drink some water before you run away, before you go outside, and then you're not going to be able to get it. Even the smallest little things like that are channeling. And so I love that you're bringing up this idea that when we communicate with nature, we're already doing it. We just don't recognize the mechanics of how it is that we're doing it, to be able to be aware of the fact that we're doing it. And then after the fact, many of the people that work with you are like, well, I've been doing this all my life. It's like, go figure. I didn't realize I've been doing this all my life. And I think that's where all of us are, where as we get to know ourselves and we get to know the process behind what we do, all of a sudden we're like, oh, this isn't anything special. This is actually quite ordinary. This is actually quite normal. It's just we make it bigger than it really is, as you say. I think that's a beautiful message.
And that's what I feel like. I always feel like it's great that I can talk to trees and rocks and animals, but it's more important that everybody else remembers that they can do it too, right? Like, just like it's great to know how to change my oil, right? Because that's a functional skill to be able to have. And then I can choose, am I going to change it or am I going to pay someone else to do it, right? That's fine. But to know the basics, the basic skill, I think it's one of those basic life skills that all of us should know how, remember how to do. And then you can still visit other readers, or, do whatever you're going to do to continue your own personal and spiritual expansion and development, but to realize that it is a basic inherent aspect of being human. We're just wired to do that, to interact with the different realms.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. A couple things that I want to share, and this is for selfish reasons. This is another example of nature communicating with me. A long time ago, I said, I haven't seen a blue jay in a long time. I would love to see a blue jay. And then shortly thereafter, I started getting a bird that would appear on my window that looked like a blue-gray bird. And I can't see it very well because it's in the shadows, so I can't quite see what it is. About maybe 2 months later, which was about 2 weeks ago now, I'm walking to pick up my car from getting an oil change, actually. And I walk underneath the tree, and all of a sudden a bird starts singing loudly. And then I look up, and it's a blue jay. And I'm thinking to myself, why did this bird sit silently until I was under the tree? And that was like, it blew my mind. It's like, that's just amazing that, this bird is saying, hey, you asked for me and here I am. And it might not have been immediate. It might not have been the next day, but I knew that that bird was telling me, hey, you asked for me and here I am. Thank you for bringing me into your experience. And it was just such a beautiful moment. So
It's so fun, right? Like, that's when the magic happens. And I always liken it to, like a movie, like cue the rabbit. And then the rabbit comes through. Now, do we catch it? There's a really cute meme out there where it's like, when you ask for a sign, but your spirit guides have shown you like 17 signs, 8 different feathers, 3 crystals, and whatever else, and a billboard, and you're like, oh, I just didn't get a sign. And I hear that from the trees a lot, that the humans, you guys spend a lot of time asking questions and you spend very little time listening for the answer. And I'm like, oh yeah, guilty.
I use that all the time. I borrowed that from you all the time. All the
Yeah,
time.
it's like, oh yeah, okay, got it.
So you talked about your different ways in which you connect. And I know that it's interesting that you brought this up, and I don't know why this is coming up now, but I've never seen you trans channel in a public setting in these kinds of talks, have it be with me or with John or with other people that you talk to. What I've seen you do is you get the message and you translate it. In private, I have seen you trans channel a tree before, and I forget why it came up, but you ended up having the tree speak through you. How does that experience, can you talk to why it is that you don't share that aspect of your skill set as publicly as you do your ability to listen and repeat?
Yeah, yeah, you put it really well. I do it in my different groups that I lead and things to that effect, but in everyday appearances and things like that, it's just not my shtick, right? Like it's not my go-to ability. And so it takes a little bit of a back seat, and not even a back seat, but it's more like the nice dress, right? That I take out for good occasions. It's like that. That's more like what it feels like to me. Than it's not even a fear. It's just very special to me. And not that the other stuff is not special to me, but the other stuff is very much like translating, right? Which happened my whole life, right? Again, around the kitchen table. Some people would be speaking one language, mostly Spanish, and then it would be translated into English, and or vice versa, whatever it was. So I think that it's more of a predominance for me, right? Like I'm right-handed. It's more natural for me to do that. And then there's times that you're doing other things, it's more special. And then I pull out the good dress.
I love that. I love that. Dressing up for the occasion.
Right.
And as always, so I'm just going to invite everybody that's listening in live, feel free to ask questions, bring something up, raise a hand, feel free to interact with us. Ana Maria and I can, like Shannon, Ana Maria and I can talk for hours about wherever we go. So, you know, we can go in whatever direction you guys feel is going to be helpful for you. Before kind of opening up the floor for everybody, I wanted to again just kind of invite you to talk to us a little bit more about what you wanted to share with us today. What inspires you in the moment to let us know about connecting with nature?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's one of the mechanical pieces, and I feel like when our brain, our thinking mind, has something to munch on, it can leave us alone for a minute, right? To lean in to the possibilities, lean in to the magic. And again, at any point, people can have spontaneous abilities appear, any of that. But what I see more often is a cyclical kind of development that happens for people. And I call it the intuitive development cycle. It's oftentimes we think about whether it's channeling or any of our intuitive abilities, we think about it like an on-off switch, right? Like, oh, I activated my pineal gland and now it's going to turn on, right? And it does happen like that sometimes. But what I see more often is people going through a cycle. And so it is cyclical. And so we revisit things again. It's not linear, it's not on and off. And so what typically will happen for folks, and I'm just going to use a tree as an example, since those are my besties. So you may feel really drawn to a particular tree. And you, at first, it may just be about you, like, oh my goodness, I'm in such admiration and gratitude, and I'm so awed by this tree. And it's very one way, right? But you feel the draw to that tree. Then eventually, what will happen in that cycle is you'll then move on to the next phase, and there's no like, do this for 30 days and then the next one happens. And sometimes they happen out of order too. But what will typically then happen in the cycle is you'll be interacting, let's just use the same tree as an example. And not only are you like sending out the good vibes to the tree, all of a sudden you start to feel good vibes coming back from the tree. And like I said, these can happen, over time, or it can happen simultaneously or concurrently and in a row, or consecutively is what I was trying to say. I'm looking at this one tree out here because it's kind of waving at everybody. It's a ponderosa pine, and I'll ask it some questions for the group later. But then what will typically happen after that, where you feel like a vibration, then you move into this place where it's more of a two-way communication, right? Like either you'll put something out, like asking the tree a question, maybe about the tree, maybe about what's going on in your life, and you will get a response. And when we get a response, what we're looking at, again, is through our clairsenses? Is it something you're hearing audibly or in your mind's ear? Is it something you're seeing in the physical or in your mind's eye? Is it a physical sensation and an emotion that you're experiencing, or is it a knowingness that drops in? So that's how you would receive a message, right, through one of your intuitive channels. And then in that intuitive development cycle, there is a point where it feels like radio silence. So maybe you had all these really cool, amazing experiences with this tree or this rock or this dog or the lake or whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, it's radio silence, nothing happens. And that's when a lot of times people will come to me because they're like, I think I broke it, right? Like, I don't know, it used to work, now it doesn't. All the things I used to do to make it happen, right? Because we think we make things happen. It's not working. And so what I have to explain is this is an expansion period, and it typically, it is like radio silence, and you are in the middle of an up level, and it will come back. You didn't break it, but excuse me. But it does require that you surrender in the moment and be patient with what's going to happen. I'm going to mute myself to clear my throat.
Yeah, and while you do that, I have spent the last couple of months really struggling with my channeling. Like it just hasn't happened with my practice group. Or if it happens very superficially, and I'm not really allowing myself to really go there. And, you know, as frustrating as it might feel at times, I'm really leaning into what you're saying about, you know, this is happening for a reason, and it's no coincidence either, because the energies of the planet have shifted so much, and I'm still trying to catch up and shift, or there's something happening within my own process that's shifting. That's, you know, I love the idea of radio silence, and as a reminder that that is a symptom, if you will, of up leveling, of shifting within our abilities. So I love that kind of invitation. Shannon is asking a question, and you sort of already answered it, which is, when connecting to trees or plants for communication, is it more like how animals do visuals? I don't know exactly what Shannon means by that, but you might. Or a language that shifts in translation. What does that communication feel like for you compared to connecting to a past loved one or a spirit guide?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, for me, plants and animals feel very similar. And I think, again, it's because it's the way that I'm wired, but I do know what Shannon's talking about, because there are a predominance of folks who receive the telepathic images, right, that the animal is sending. What I've learned and what I teach and try and really nurture in people is that multisensory piece. So you might get it through hearing audibly a message. You might see it, right? Like you might get the flash of the message in your viewing screen inside, or you might look at a plant, right? Like I've had trees like light up for me before, looking at them physically. And then that's how I know where to go, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go to that lit up tree. That's easy. Or just the knowingness. So to me, it could come in any one of the channels. But I do hear from a lot of people that there is that predominance of them seeing the images that the dog is sending them. But I also get all of it through all of the senses, right? Like, and my least favorite is when they want to share with me a taste, right? Like, no, thank you. Because think about the things that are, I love
Bitter.
being a dog, but eating is not in my menu. And so I'm like, how about I just smell that, right? Like, I'm always trying to skirt around that, but they're so kind. They want me to taste it. Cats are actually, it's almost a little bit worse than the dogs, depending what the dog got into. But
Love that. And kind of a follow-up question, have you found any to be guides when reading for a person? And I assume Shannon's referring to plants and trees. Have you found specific plants or trees to be guides for someone that you're doing a reading for?
Yeah, that's a big part of what I do in terms of different when I do just a basic session, a private session, when I am taking them through the breathing exercise at the beginning, this is when uh, their team, my team, start talking to each other, and I start getting the information. And sometimes it's a little bit beforehand, right? Like I'm just minding my own business, getting water and going to the bathroom right before a session. And I'll just get this flood of information, right? Like a particular tree that's there to work with this person. And they're usually very particular about either it's a new friend guide that they're meeting, and or they're like, you're going to be working together through the rest of the autumn or through this next moon cycle or whatever. So yeah, absolutely. Just like um, very similar to totem animals, power animals, and spirit animals, right? Like those are different kinds of animal guides. I've seen the same thing in the plant world and with trees. Um, I think that there are just not enough people that are working with that, right? But I see more and more of it all the time, so it's very exciting, and the trees are excited because again they've been waiting for us, right? They've been waiting for us to remember.
Maitland is a spirit guide that I talk a lot about because she works with Jamie Butler, who's one of my teachers. So I'm exposed to Maitland quite a lot. And Maitland at one point reminded us or told us that the plant world, plant and tree world, is incredibly influential in our experience, that we just haven't really understood that. And that as we evolve in where we are evolving, we're going to begin to understand more and more about our integrated relationship that we have with plants and trees. So it's really exciting to see that becoming more and more to the forefront, again, similar to the idea of Fae, as people become aware of the fact that the trees and the plants are very influential in our experience. Again, it's going to draw people towards that direction, hopefully.
Yeah, we really have just forgotten collectively, right? Like nature has become this beautiful backdrop. And it is a beautiful backdrop, but there's so much more going on than meets the eye. I actually had a regression where I was able to recall a past life where I I was the only human around, and it was the trees and plants that were teaching me. Um, and I was tending to them as they were teaching me about them and about propagation and healing and medicine and energetics and things like that. So I that is probably why connecting to the trees and connecting to the animals feels so much the same to me as connecting to humans. Because I remember some of those experiences, and it kind of changes things up, right? Like you move through your life, you move through the forest in a different way
Yeah.
when you remember that.
Yeah. And it reminds me, there's one of the fellow students in my Michael Newton training program brought up a question that one of the people that she was working with, instead of going into a past life, into a human life, she went into a stone. And she was saying, how do I deal with that? And for me, it's like no differently than you would a human. It's just another lifetime. But I bring this up because of what you say, because many of us, we just don't remember the fact that we have been trees, we have been stones, or we are stones, given the lifeline of a stone. We are a stone, we are a tree in other aspects of our multidimensional self. But having a lifetime as a tree or a stone is equally as powerful as having a lifetime as a human. It's just a different experience. And many of us don't realize that, or aren't really conscious of that. And if you are drawn to trees or certain animals, it's possible, like you say, that you had a lifetime where that was a really relevant aspect of your experience. And that's why you've got an affinity for that particular vibration, for that particular energy. It resonates with you because you're familiar with it.
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying with that. And that's what I say, whatever lights you up, whatever you're drawn to, follow that. That's what's going to be the portal, right? Like, so we can do all of this stuff, and you can do it with angels, you can do it with ascended masters, you can do it with animals, or whatever it is that, but what's your thing? What lights you up? What are the conversations that make you lean in a little bit more and get excited? That's where you're going to find your magic. That's where you're going to find your inspiration. That's where your gifts are going to open up and flourish.
And this is actually a really good segue to a question that Shannon is bringing up, which is, how do people connect to nature when they live in highly populated areas? And so the question is, is it through distance, or how do you include wildlife in your day-to-day when you're living in the middle of an urban setting?
I love that question. And I love me some Shannon, right? Like, I love that we just ended up together again, right? Like, it's so perfect. Because I promise you, right? Like, Shannon and I cannot, like, sync our calendars. We just both got back to you about those times. So that is super great. And what I love about that question, because most people do live in urban areas. If we look around the world, right? Like, that's where people congregate, in urban areas. And so often people will look at that like it's a disability or something, right? Like, oh, I got to live here. But what I've been told from my nature friends is that the folks who aren't immersed in nature all the time, or surrounded by the animals, or even maybe they don't even have their own animal in their, like an animal companion in their home, these are the folks that are being asked to work energetically, right? So everything is energy. Yeah, on one level, I'm kind of the lazy one, because I just walk out my back door and there's a million acres of national forest, right? Like, you can't, I'm going to be hugging some trees. They're just everywhere. But to be able to do that, to connect in, to drop into your heart space and connect to a tree or an animal, or to be in the hustle and bustle of a city and see a robin or an owl or a coyote or something, and notice it, first of all, right? Like your story, we missed so many. I mean, a lot of us would have missed that caterpillar, the turtle, even the blue jay. And so when we lean into it and we're able to make that connection, despite the fact that we're in a concrete jungle, despite the fact that we're in a high-rise apartment, it allows us to flex our energetic muscles, and it helps us remember about that unity consciousness and working multidimensionally. It gets us out of our lower thinking mind that keeps us stuck in this 3D density and allows us to expand out. So you can bring nature into your home in different ways, right? Asking its permission first, and bring it into your home. You can, we've got the biggest encyclopedia on the planet in our phone, right? You can pull up pictures, you can pull up sounds, but it is about paying attention, right? And so even if you are just walking from your apartment building to your car, notice, right? Was there a squirrel that came around? Start to pay attention. What do you hear? What do you smell? What are you feeling? Are you noticing the leaves? That was the big thing now, right? Because we just all left fall. You guys might still be there. We're pretty much through it with all the snow on the mountains here now. But it's not a detriment for folks. It is really a beckoning to lean into the energetics, to lean into your inherent abilities. So I always look at it as those are the ones who are in the advanced class, because they're being asked, right? Like, it is different when you can be in the physical presence. So I do feel like it's the advanced placement class when you have to live in that.
And for me, it's about noticing even the smallest aspect. And so it isn't about, is it the squirrel? Is it a bird? Is it a blade of grass that's cutting through the concrete? Is it a flower that happens to appear on a little patch of grass in the sidewalk? Most cities will have some trees and some decorations of foliage of some way, shape, or form. And so for me, it's about noticing and putting my energy into even the smallest representation of nature, and almost bringing that up into the forefront and making it a gesture of appreciation. And so for me, that's what I do when I'm in an urban environment, is I notice the small little things, and I kind of pay attention to that. And
So
so
I
Ruth
I
brings
was
up
just going to say, I wanted to respond to something that Kelly had written. She hopes that Astro makes an appearance. And I thought, oh, he probably won't, because I've got the door closed. And, you know, almost like on cue, he like comes in his nose right now. He's like sitting here. He may start doing his howling in a minute. But thank you, Kelly. It was Astro's birthday yesterday. He turned 8. He's a Great Dane, and he will not be ignored. So.
And I, for those of you, do you have that on YouTube, or did you put that, because you sent a video of that in your newsletter of him howling?
Yeah, I sent it to the folks in my group. I don't have it out anywhere publicly,
Okay.
but
So
feel free to share. That's fine.
so if you want, she's got a really adorable video of Astro howling and clearing his throat chakra. Really, really adorable. I loved it. Really, really loved it. So I wanted to bring this up because Ruth brought this up as well, that there's insects everywhere. And so insects are another part of nature. And so I know many of us are kind of go, ooh, insects. I've got fruit flies that have been lingering in my apartment for months. Sometimes they've gotten pretty bad and other times they're less, but they're still around. And so for me, that's part of nature being with me and playing with me is the fruit flies. So
Yeah, and insects, right? Like when we look at the archetypical energy of them, they have to do with our sensitivities, right? Like our energetic sensitivities. When you think about an insect, they're moving through using their senses in a different way than, say, the mammals and the fish and things like that. So we want to be looking at our sensory system when we're interacting, you know, with different insects that are coming in, right? Like flies are one of ours that show up around here a lot, especially with the horses. So flies, you know, but we play, right? Like I talk to them all the time and I let them know, oh, I'm sorry you got stuck in our house, right? That's a bummer. So let me know. And I direct them usually to 1 or 2 different windows. And then I'm able to, I'm like the fly whisperer, James says, I'm able to relocate them safely out of the house to a place where they're actually going to be able to have a good life. But you can all of these, from the tiniest thing, right? The insects, and especially the ones that make us go, ah, right? Like the creepy crawlies, those are shadow animals for us. And it brings in a whole, everybody wants to talk about power animals. Nobody's talking about shadow animals. And shadow animals are those, right? Like for me, it used to be spider. They were the ones that would like paralyze me with fear. And I was able to, through understanding their energy, turn it into a power animal. And spiders are all about, what are you weaving, right? And would you want to encounter it again? And it's talking about our thoughts, right? Like I really had to work with that because I was creating more of the same and it wasn't working for me. I didn't like it and I would complain about it more and create more of it. So I had to learn a new way to be with the energy. And spider has been such an amazing ally in that journey.
I always will, when I see a spider in my environment, and some of the creepy crawlers, I apologize. I think they're just kind of ugly and nasty, and I don't want them around my house, so I end up killing them. Sorry. But a lot of them I do try and save, spiders being one of that category. And I always say to them, I'm going to take you out. I hope that's okay if you let me. And if it hides, then I know that it doesn't want to be taken out, at least not that point. And then they'll appear in my day somewhere else, and at some point they'll let me take them out. And if they don't, then they're with me. That's, you know, so that's kind of their choice.
Yeah, and you're right. Like sometimes we have a sink spider in their kitchen where she set up her house there, right? It's clear to us that that's where she's living. She's not in our way. We're not going to harm her. It's in like a little windowsill over the kitchen sink. So she's our sink spider, right? And it's, there are those times, and we're all on our own path, and we're not to judge anyone on their path of what they do or they don't do, right? For me, it's like, ooh, I just need all the good karma from some of my past lives that I can muster, and so that it doesn't resonate with me to take something out, right? But if I have to, for some reason, I cannot find a peaceful solution, I talk to it and I explain to it what's going to happen. And then I would, gosh, it's been so long, I don't even have any examples. I would find the most humane way for me to do it. But we're able to create a whole different way with interacting with the world around us. And the truth is, there is no out there, right? Like all of it is reflecting back to us. And we have the ability as these powerful creators to create these rich, full lives that are full of direction and meaning if we let it, if we allow it in. So often we let this lower mind rule the roost and take over everything. And that lower mind is great for balancing your checkbook, right? Like it's great for coming up with a email sequence, it's perfect for certain things. But connecting to spirit, it wants to resist, it wants to fight, it wants to remind you of a million other things you have to do. And it's like a puppy, right? We have to train it. There needs to be a pack order in there where you are in the driver's seat as your authentic higher self, and you direct the mind instead of it running you ragged, because it's really good at that. And it's had a lot of practice.
And Casey's asking, what about wasps, bees, and roaches? And I can talk about wasps and bees. Roaches, not so much, but wasps and bees, when they come into my experience, they're saying hello. And the bees, I mean, one of the sessions that you and I had, I think it was for my podcast, you talked about the bee energy as being playful and creative and almost abnormal, because the bee shouldn't be able to fly given its weight, its size, and the little tiny wings that it has. And so it's this incredible miracle of a creature. And so when we start to kind of see these insects for that aspect of it, it really changes our experience. And for me, bees and wasps, if I leave them alone, they're not going to attack me. I mean, there's no reason for them to do that.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. We go into our fear, and then we put out that vibration, and then it's just like, I mean, the animals do this too. Oh my God, that person's afraid, right? Like, because in the wild, if watch a herd of deer, if one of them like perks up, right, and they start looking around, then pretty soon everybody's looking around because they're like, something's wrong. Humans, we're just not tuned in the same way. So we see a bee and it freaks us out. We start flailing around. We put out all this fear energy, and the bee's like, WTF, right? And so that's what creates the agitation. I have bees land on me all the time, and I just tell them, oh, because I'm wearing a bright color or I'm wearing essential oils. I'm like, I'm sorry, I know I look and smell like a plant, but I'm not, like you'll find out in a minute, and they can taste through their feet too. So sometimes they need to just land and see what's going on. Doesn't take them long to realize, oh, you're not what I'm looking. You're not
you're not a juicy flower
I'm looking for. When we're looking at those other pieces in terms of like the cockroaches, right? Like I get it, and people say this about mosquitoes too, right? Like, not only do they not understand maybe their ecological aspect in the circle of life, right? Like, it hurts, they pass disease. And so we have to look at those pieces, right? Especially like a cockroach. Of course, they have, and everything has a divine and a shadow side to it. So the shadow side or the shadow side, of course, is the disease, again, that they would be passing, those things, the infestation aspect. But when we look at their divine side, we look at resilience and about being able to make it through, right? And what do we need more than that, right? Like, times are tough. We should be looking and asking Cockroach some questions like, how do you guys keep being so prolific when everything is against you and everybody's trying to kill you, and they, will infuse toxic gases into their homes to get rid of you, and yet still you rise, right? Like, so to get some information instead of going into our gut level reactions. And so, of course, Cockroach would also be a shadow animal. And what you want to do is feel into, what do you think about it? Oh, the dirty, the gross, the disease, the whatever comes up for you first, and then feel into that. It all has to do with toxicity, really. And so what you want to look at, what Cockroach is mirroring back, is where are the places in your life that you let toxicity right into your home? And we can pick out different energies. Maybe we play low vibrational shows in our home, or messages or music, or whatever it may be, or we are with people who are judgmental and put people down. That, to me, Cockroach would be like, what's the outside negativity that you're letting into your home? And especially when we have a big old reaction to it, there's something to look at.
It's a beautiful way of looking at the respect of cockroaches. So a couple little comments here. Feeling for the ants. Bees are amazing. There's a comment here from Ruth. I'm in the interspecies program for animal chaplaincy. I don't know what that means, but it sounds amazing. And we are learning how connected we are with everything in the natural world, not just the dogs and cats, but wildlife, plants, water, the environment, everything. All is energy, all from the same source, all with our own paths, but still connected. We have become extremely observant and appreciative. And I think that's really kind of the message that Anna Maria and I are chatting about, is being observant and appreciative of everything that's around us, the things that we would
I would say
take for
it's a
granted.
reminder of that unity consciousness, right? Like, there is no separation, right? Like, I am that gnat, I am that cockroach, I am that beautiful oak tree, I am that mountain with the beautiful sunset shining on it right now. We have gotten so into the belief of separation, I mean, there's going to come a time in our evolution where us talking badly about the cockroaches and the mosquitoes is going to be like how some of us grew up in families where they talked about other races of people in really bad ways, right? It's just the next level of that. So someday, the kids as kids will say, do you know my dad used to kill spiders, right? Like, it's going to be unbelievable. Like, we were serial killers.
That's actually really cute. I love that imagery. So Bev is asking, what about snakes and rats? They scare her. How can she get over that?
Right. So again, anything that brings up a strong, intense, especially what we would say a negative emotion, those are the shadow animals. So they're showing up. And again, you don't have to become best friends with them. You don't have to invite them into your home or anything. But what we want to do is catch ourselves. That what happens is we see, the snake. Even, my mom had a huge fear of snakes. She couldn't even see a picture of one without like losing her shit. So we want, and when we get that strong reaction, it distracts us, right? Because we're like, oh my God, it's a spider, where is it? It's on me, it's on me, it's on me, right? And so we're looking around, we're totally distracted, and we go into the story in our head, and we lose that point of power in that moment. So it's fine that we know, I'm afraid of snakes, right? So then we can know that, but we can look at the reaction. So instead of, and I know after having such an intense fear of spiders at one point, that you have to get yourself to a safe space, whether that's like somebody moved the picture or, you know, you're away from the spider, whatever it is, but then to look at what was the emotions that came up and where did you feel them? You know, like for me, it was just a tight constriction in my whole body. And I couldn't even run away. I certainly couldn't kill them. I was so afraid of them. I would just get paralyzed. And it was showing me where trauma in my early childhood had induced that fear response in me, a trauma of freezing up. And I could see in my life different places when similar energy or people with similar energy would show up, I would freeze, right? I wouldn't speak my truth. It would, like, I could feel it in my body. And so Spider was able to show me those pieces. So when we're looking at snakes, and if you're a snakes, a lot of times there is a connection to different kinds of sexual traumas. And there's a million different varieties of that, especially in humans for whatever reason. So people might want to look at that there is some healing that is looking to be done. The other thing is with snakes, right? They shed their skin. And in order to grow, if they don't shed their skin, they're going to die. And there's that reminder to us, we got to shed that old stuff. You know, yeah, we had the trauma, drama, whatever, but we have to at some point stand in our power and stop re-inflicting it on ourselves by playing it over and over in our heads. And so we have to learn that what happened to us, you know, once or a succession of times, whatever that might be. But now we continue to be the abuser and traumatizer to ourselves with our thoughts. And so we need to get conscious about that, do our spiritual work, do the clearings, and some of these things are sticky and we got to do them over and over and over again to move through that and to bring the healing. So Snake is really talking about those aspects of letting go and shedding and releasing that old stuff, because it will kill us, right? And how many of us know those people that have been tormented by their past so much that it took them out, whether they took their own life or they did the slow choice of suicide by over drinking, overindulging in different things or risky behaviors.
And something else that comes up for me with Snake is flexibility. Their ability to weave their way through things might be the message that's relevant for you to hear. You know, so, and again, I'm only bringing this up as what Ana Maria just said are two possible meanings to how this animal is communicating with you. And I just threw in another one that came to me, which is, you know, that ability to manipulate their body into these incredible shapes and forms and to wrap themselves and to hug the branches in this beautiful, majestic way. And so it really just depends on what resonates with you when you think of the creature. You know, think of the power aspect of the animal and see if that resonates with you in whatever shape or way that plays out. And what Ana Maria is also inviting is to, you know, play also with the shadow aspect of that animal. What is it that is drawing that out with you? And to kind of play with that. And it's going to be individual to you. You can look at Google and all the different things for different meanings of the animals, which is available in all the different encyclopedias like Ana Maria mentioned, but really lean into what does this resonate with me? What do I get from this? When I think of a spider, I think of something very different than Ana Maria does. So when a spider comes into my awareness, the message that it's sharing with me is because of my symbolism, not hers. And I can use hers and it might resonate with me, but it's really about my symbolism that the world is playing with me with. There's a question about rats. Do you want to talk about rats, or is that basically the same kind of idea?
Yeah, and again, feeling in for that person's association with the rats, right? Because it's very different than a mouse. It's much bigger, and it does, right? It does strike up fear, and to feel into, again, some of the more divine aspects of survival, right? Like they live in some of the harshest environments. And again, us humans who are going through some harsh times could learn a lot from them.
And Ruth brings up a really interesting question. The fears that we have about animals, the relationships that we have about animals, could this be coming from past life experiences?
That's a great question. Yeah, awareness actually, and it can. And sometimes it's not even that we had, I got bit by a snake in another life and died. Yeah, that probably did happen. But more often, there's going to be that karmic connection of we were really shitty to some snakes in another lifetime. And now, right, like it's up. And it's, again, nothing is up because we suck or to make us wrong or any of that. It's all up for healing and for us to come into the remembrance and back into the wholeness.
And this is also about our societal lessons. Our society tells us that rats are this, or that spiders are that, or we hear a million people are afraid of spiders. Well, if they're afraid of spiders, then I should be afraid of spiders too. Or so we end up learning a lot of this kind of ancestral lineage that it's passed down from generation to generation of how we're supposed to respond to these creatures. And to some degree, there is the element of like the disease, like Ana Maria mentioned, but it's really kind of playing up into this idea of getting outside of the preconceived ideas of what these animals represent from the way that we've been taught, and to lean more into, okay, let's look at the divine element of this creature. What does this represent? What value, what beauty, what magnificence is part of their experience? And maybe that's why they're so charged, because that's the energy that I need. Or it's the shadow side of that energy that is reminding me to look at something that I need to let go and release, that I'm still holding on to it. And that shadow is bringing it up. And the beauty of shadow work, and I just learned this the other day from Margot, which I'm going to repeat on session 6.
I love Margot. She's great.
She's awesome. She said something that I really loved, which is the energies that are bringing up our shadow are the same energies that are empowering us to let go. They're the same energies that empower us to heal and to release. And I love that because it's the shadow animals that are bringing it up, but it's that same energy that's going to help you to transcend that and to move beyond that. And I love that as an invitation.
It's just so rich. And then we also forget about, not, I mean, of course there's the cultural and societal programming, but there's the epigenetics, right? And oh my goodness, science is starting to corroborate this with study after study, and they're showing it between 14 to 20 generations, which is approximately 300 to 600 years back. So imagine everything that our families, our peoples have gone through, that people as a whole, that humanity has gone through it during that time. And all of the things, right, from plagues and, the health concerns, and, or, I think about when people have trained different animals to attack different humans. All of that is in our field and in our cells, and we have that remembrance of that. We have to dominate nature or else, right? Or else we're going to die. And we're at this point in our evolution as humanity where we have to find a way. It's not about dominance. Yeah, we need to be safe. We need to have shelter and these things, but it's not about that dominance. And it is about living in harmony and living in balance, and that the natural world that we are destroying has so many of the answers for the questions and the issues and the crises that we are facing. And if we would listen, we could have a different take instead of, continuing on the same trajectory.
There's a question about mosquitoes, and there's a comment from Shannon about her her daughter and granddaughter. But one thing that I wanted to mention earlier, and I want to come back to this, for people that are in an urban jungle and are looking to connect with nature, you can always do it through the things that you purchase for your home. For example, you can see on my bed that I've got a bedspread or a blanket of wolves. Wolves are one of my primary protectors. They're my guardians, and they're one of my power animals that I've had since I was a child. I also have a stuffed bear and a hippopotamus. And then on that side of the screen, I've got a fox, an eagle, a pig. And so I've got these kind of stuffed little animals that for me, I'm drawn to on occasions to their energy, because my eyes are drawn to them. I might not be drawn to them all the time, but every once in a while, my eyes will go to the hippo. And so I'll connect with that energy in that way. And so this is another way that you can play with the energies of nature within your household. Pictures on the walls, or wallpaper on your phone or your computer, you can play with that. It's a beautiful way to connect with nature. Shannon talks about how her daughter and granddaughter are afraid of spiders, but her granddaughter asked Santa for a radio-controlled spider, which is really cool. And Santa got her a remote-controlled black widow. But Casey's asking, what about mosquitoes? Some of us are more of a magnet to mosquitoes than others. What are your thoughts on mosquitoes?
Yeah, and there are different blood types, and I am one of those. If there's a mosquito anywhere around, it is going to come and find me. And so I still won't kill them. I will shoo them away, because I have big reactions to their bites as well, which is also a big message to me about outside negativity getting under my skin, right? Because it does. So I work with plants, right? Like I use essential oils on me to keep them away and to repel them and things like that. But the mosquitoes, right, they're taking your blood, which is your life force energy. So you want to look at all those little things that are sucking the life out of you. And, the last 2 years, it's been watching the nonsense go on in the world. That has been my big mosquito, right? Like that's where I feel the mosquito energy. And it reminds me, oh, there's something I can do, right? Like, so, if it's the mosquito, I'm doing essential oil blends. If it is outside negativity, I am doing my energetic practices. I am making sure that I am grounding and earthing. I am making sure that I am having my transmission times with the trees, right? Where I'm working with trees in different, sacred geometry configurations to transmute and heal things that are going on for me.
I had a mosquito issue not too long ago where I got devoured. I was just lying in bed reading a book, and within 5 minutes, I just got devoured. So much so that I had to go out and do something about it, because it was just insane. But one of the things that came up for me as I was kind of asking questions of what's the significance of this experience for me, and what I was told was, what are the things in my life that I've been putting off? What are the aspects of my experience that I've been not taking action on? And so the mosquitoes were there pestering me to kind of get me to take action. And so again, the way in which these messages come forward will vary from moment to moment and time to time and person to person.
Yeah, it's phenomenal when we take a moment to look at it, right? Because everything is energy. So that infestation of ants, or, I worked with someone who was having issues with the no-see-ums, right? The little natty things that you don't see until they bite you. And looking at the layers and the messages, right? Because everything is acting as a messenger. And this was someone who had helped teach people how to work with their emotions, how to understand their emotions, right? And so when I first started talking to him about, what's coming up is this thing about emotions and teaching people some more. And he's like, oh, that's so funny. I've done that. That was my whole career. And I said, well, look, we're at a time right now where people don't know how to handle their emotions. They're real, and part of it's because they're just so overflowing. And then, we don't even go into the toxic world we live in, and their poor liver, having its being overrun. But he got eventually that he was being asked to come back out and talk about this some more and teach it at the next level, right? Like, where are the places that he, as a teacher, as a master in that, where he gets hung up, because he's still human, right? And so how can he help others, right, do that? And it would look different now that he's in a different chapter of his life. But there's a lot of phenomenal messages that are coming to us and from nature and through nature all of the time. But it's really reminding us to be in our own natural rhythm, our own natural flow, and lean into that, because it's a natural thing for us to be able to do it.
Yeah. So having said that, and just kind of keeping an eye on the time, I would love, as always, to invite you to connect with the entities, whatever shape or form, are with us today, and to see what kind of messages they have for us.
Yeah, I'm get that tree is still, and it's actually two trees. We call them the sister trees, and I didn't realize it at first, because as I'm looking from here, it's a little bit of a different angle than where I'm normally interacting with them. So I want to feel into that for sure and see what's coming through for us from these beautiful sister trees. They're a pair of ponderosas that have just grown up together next to each other, and I'm gonna say they're probably about 150 years old based on their size and the other trees in this area. So let me just take a moment to breathe and connect in. The first thing that starts coming through is they're laughing. They're like, we are not that formal. You do not need to do all of that. And they're right? Like, these are trees that I connect with a lot, for personal, our own personal things here. And they're like, their family is what they are. So it was very funny. But there is this piece that keeps coming through. It's like they're waving at everyone. So kind of like with Astro when he came over here and put his nose on the door to say hi. It's the same thing, but coming from the ponderosa pine. And ponderosa itself speaks about resiliency, because they tend to grow in harsher, drier environments. So that message of resiliency for all of us, right? Like, that's what we need right now. And so also, not just the lack of water that they can sometimes end up with here in the high mountains, but the wind. And they're reminding me about their ability, right? Like, they seem like they're very strong and sturdy, but they do have the ability to bend so that they don't get broken. And that's what each of us needs to remember in our own movement through lives. We have to be able to bend. We need that flexibility, much like what Snake was talking about, to be able to come at things in a different way, because we're getting hit with energy from all directions. Think about, they're showing me, like, we get these dust devils that will just go right through. They're like little mini cyclones, and you have to be able to deal with that, or you're going to lose a branch, you're going to lose a limb. And for us to remember that ability to stay deeply grounded and rooted, but to be able, even like algae, right, like to move in that wave, that's the people who can do that are going to be the ones that are going to be around. They're the ones who are going to continue. There's also the piece for this group in particular. They're drawing me to the pine cones, which of course have that correlation to our pineal gland. And so I'm feeling, and this will be a visualization for you guys. So these two huge ponderosa pines, but there's a space and a path, right? Because our family has walked in between them and stood between them so many times. There's a little path. And so I want everyone to visualize that they are standing between the two sisters with a hand on each one, and just breathing in and feeling, as you are breathing in, that energy is coming up and going all the way down. and doing that recirculation, and even that toroidal shape right between us and the trees. So coming up and out, and then of course it's going up and out around each of those trees. And we're in that Vesica Pisces. This is the exciting part that I didn't even think about these girls coming in for us, but we're in that spot, that point of creation. And so for everyone to visualize that standing there and just receive that and put out your intention around channeling, right? Whether it's with nature, whether it's with ascended masters, whatever it is, but this is an exercise for you that the trees themselves have invited you into. So I would definitely take some time to visualize yourself standing between the two trees, visualize your own toroidal energy field, each of the trees, and then seeing that all overlapping. And that amplification that is being created between the sacred geometry and the energetic fields themselves to amplify what your intention is, but also what do you need to let go of in order for that intention to come in, right? Like we're so busy holding on to so many things that there isn't room for new things. So as you're connecting to the two trees and picture yourself there, visualize or speak out what you're releasing in order to call in your intention as well. And that's something that you can do at any point. You don't even need to be here. You can visualize what I'm telling you about, and you can put yourself there energetically and receive that energy from them. That was awfully generous of them. They've never offered that to anybody else before. That's pretty cool.
Thank you very much. We're honored.
They're fun. They're so funny. We're not that formal.
As you were
in my head still, I'm like, oh, we're gonna blah 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 blah, and they're like, we're not that.
You don't need to do that.
Put your butt down. We're not that formal.
Before you continue, I wanted to bring this up before, and we kind of got distracted at some point, and it was probably through one of our conversations where I was kind of thinking afterwards about my relationship with trees. In our house in Guatemala, there was this beautiful white barked tree that I would play on, and I would sit in its branches, and I would long to go out and be in its energy. And I never really thought of the fact that this tree was my friend as a child. And the relationship that I had with that tree was always very meaningful. And I never really connected those dots until one conversation that you and I have had where I started kind of thinking about that. And I'm bringing this up because I bet you a lot of us listening to this recording have had really powerful meaning relationships with trees or plants that we just haven't really appreciated or recognized just because it hasn't occurred to us to think of them as our friends and as our partners and as our co-creators in this lifetime. And so I wanted to bring that up, especially as your sister trees, which are part of your family, have invited us into their space. And I just wanted to share that as a reminder of how meaningful these relationships can be.
Well, and to speak again to the energetic aspect, because I'll talk to people that are like, I had this favorite tree as a child. I went back to go visit it and it was gone, right? And then they're like, oh my gosh, and I never got to tell it how important it was. And I'm like, everything is energy. Time only exists here because we made it up. Picture, right? Like get in your heart space. We use the breath. We drop into our heart space, and that breath, coupled with our conscious intent, activates that heart coherence, which activates a bridge. It creates a bridge into the quantum field. So we want to take those deep breaths because it hooks us, it like plugs us in, right? That's where we plug into. And from there, visualize yourself in that tree again. Visualize yourself under that tree again, or with, whatever it was, your favorite stones or that rock wall or the boulder or whatever it is. And have that conversation, share that, thank that tree, right? I had many trees that were my protectors, my guardians, my friends, my playmates when I was a kid. And I didn't, I knew I wouldn't have said I could talk to trees, even though I talked to trees, right? But everything is energy, and there's nothing stopping us from connecting with that. And there was some kind of energy that we received, again, right? Like little kids and animals, they know, they run to the good people and I don't want to kiss that one, right? Like that's how they are. They bark or they bite or whatever. So we can lean into that, and we can receive some of that childlike wonder again as an infusion now. And that's really what we all need, because we get so jaded in this world, and we need to be looking for the magic. I know in my own life, if I go too long, and I'm just talking hours, right, without some serious magical shit happening, I know that something's wrong. I got to get outside. I gotta change it up.
And I'm noticing the time, and I know that you've got a hard stop at the 30-minute mark. I wanted to just kind of invite the listeners into working with you. And the invitation that we've got on the website for you guys is the activation of your sacred alliance with the natural world. And it's a program that Anna Maria has put together as a really good introduction into the work that she does. I just wanted to give the opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit. And also, you can also upgrade a little bit and to spend some time, some one-on-one time with her specifically. So just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the Natural Realm Activation course, it is like a little bit of all my favorite things, right? So I start by taking folks through the 7-part shamanic journey where you connect with the animals, the plants, or the animals, the plants, the minerals, the elementals, the ancestors as well, because we oftentimes find ourselves on our path where we're spinning our wheels and we're like, I don't understand it. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. What the heck? But it's hard to build a new, strong future on a broken past. And there are things, like we've said, not just in this lifetime, in past lifetimes, in upper genealogy, things that have happened. And we can go into these shamanic journeys as a type of ceremony to help bring clearing and reconciliation and that intention to move forward in a new way with your new knowingness. And people will see that, oh, there's that momentum I've been looking for. And then, and especially folks who love the animals and nature so much, right, and they're doing maybe energy work in those areas, I found that to be very helpful for them. And then we go through several different modules where one of them we're talking about how to make that connection and how to raise your vibration so that it comes in easier, and my favorite tips and techniques for doing that. I'm also delighted to be sharing the music of the plants, right? Like that's one of my favorite fun things in the world. So I have a device that was made in Damanhur, Italy, in a eco village in northern Italy, where they've been studying plant consciousness and sentience and intelligence for almost 50 years now. And so they developed this device that allows you to, with the permission of the plant, because they won't sing if they don't want to, I've learned that. You put a probe in by the roots and you clip, it doesn't hurt them, clip onto one of their leaves, and it will translate their bioenergetic field into audible tones for us. Because the truth is, they're emitting these frequencies, these harmonics all the time, but it's outside of our audible range, so we don't hear it. But it's also part of the reason why we feel so great when we're out and around trees and nature. So I explain that whole process, and I take you through hearing and spending time with a plant and the plant music. And then you also have a recording that you can use for your own meditations and your own journeys. There's also a group session, right, where we can all come together. I'll answer questions. We can do some readings. That I believe happens in December 7th. So that's coming up. It gives you time to digest some of those modules and get questions. Or what happens a lot of times during those group questions is your team will be like, you know what, you really need to go do, journey number 3 in that first module. That's what's really coming through for you. So that's great. And then if folks want to upgrade, they get all of that course plus a private 30-minute session with me where we'll look at the animal, the plant, the mineral, and the elemental or the element that are supporting you through the next season, and how you can work with them and what they have to say to you, as well as whatever questions you bring to the session. I'm known for getting through things really quickly. So we do 30-minute sessions, and people typically are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe everything we covered in that time. So super grateful to offer that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so everybody that is listening live and in the recording, reach out to Ana Maria. Of course, the information is on the website with the invitation for the offer, as well as her website. She has regular, what are they called? Something Wednesdays?
What's Up Wednesdays?
What's
yes,
Up Wednesdays?
Broadcast every other Wednesday.
So with her community, she is very active with her community. Feel free to reach out and connect to her. I would strongly recommend it. Obviously, you can tell my adoration for her. As always, Ana Maria, thank you for being here with us. Look forward to the next time that we connect. I know that you've got to go, so lots of love to you, and I will speak to you soon. For everybody else, we will see you tomorrow. This is the end of day one. Always bittersweet at the end of these things. Wonderful conversations. Hopefully you've enjoyed them. And I will see you guys tomorrow at 1 p.m. We're going to be starting with Florentine. And then we will, yeah, she's awesome.
Also one of the contributing authors in my nature book. So,
oh, I did not know that.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So Florentine's going to be with us to start off the day tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time, of course. I will leave you guys for now. Until then, being spirit, being human, simply being from love. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you for being part of this incredible experience. We hope that this session has inspired a new level of understanding within you, allowing you to expand more easily into the essence of your true self and become an even more powerful alchemist in your own life. We invite you to listen to the session again and again in order to go deeper each time and expand even more. Have it be via the replays or the unlimited access package. If you have enjoyed being part of this event, we invite you to tell your friends so that they can join us in the future. We are grateful that you are here, and we thank you for co-creating this experience with us. Until next time, we leave you with being spirit, being human, and simply being from love.